In mining, we measure greatness in tons, and when a section crosses the million mark, it means everything came together. The people, the plan, the leadership, and the belief that it could be done. Today's guest is a general manager from Khuthala Colliery, a leader who didn't just cross that mark once, but 5 times in a single year. He's here to share the mindset, the method, and the moments that brought it together. I'm your host, Mahlogonolo Mashile, and thank you so much for joining us. Please do remember to subscribe, like, and leave us a comment. You can also financially support the channel by clicking on the Super Thanks button. Having said all of that, let's meet our guest. Mhlonipheni Buthelezi is a man shaped by over 30 years of dedication to the mining industry. Holding a BTech from the University of Johannesburg and an MBA from Wits Business School, he has walked the full journey, from the front lines of production, through projects and planning, to his current seat as the General Manager at Khuthala Colliery. Today, he joins us to unpack how he led his operation to produce 5 millionaires in a single year, an operation that continues to demonstrate high performance. We get into the mindset, the method, and the moments behind sustained excellence. This is his story. This is the game plan. Mhlonipheni, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for having me here. It's for the first time, so hopefully I won't disappoint you.
100%. Let's take it back to where it all started. Who's Mhlonipheni, and just how did you even get yourself into this industry?
Yeah, you know, I've been through a lot of challenges since I've joined this industry. Sometimes I even forget in terms of who is Mhlonipheni, but I'll try. High level. Coming from KZN, and this is where I was born, from a very big, poor family.
Sure.
Yeah, financially, the family was struggling. One man, my dad used to have 21 kids,
Sure.
and he never had any formal employment. So I was raised in that type of a family. My mom was a second wife to my dad, and then I was the eldest son in my mom's family. Yeah, and then that forced me to say, but by the way, at school I was one of those kids that were always favored by school principal, teachers, because I was doing well. From grade R, these days you've got grade R, up until grade 12. If you look at my report, I was always position one. So hence I was famous at school, and then they organized sponsorship for me. I remember we got that approval letter that we can go to Bellville in Cape Town. Then the biggest career for me was I need to go into a radiographer.
Sure.
But it was not my choice. My teachers were the ones to say, go into a radiographer, you will be employed, you will change your family picture. But because of the struggles at home, looking at my mom after my dad passed on, I think 1995, when I was doing grade 11, 1996, I'm in grade 12, I'm like, I cannot go to any university. I must get something to support this woman, because she was trying to raise small kids. There are so many. She was struggling. I decided to just join the team there in Johannesburg. I was staying in one of the hostels here in Vosloorus. I don't know, there are 2. There is a Besuthwini, Emazulwini. So I was one of people living in that Emazulwini with obviously a lot of people from the same village who were trying to accommodate me. It's a big story for another day, because 3 people were sleeping on top of the bed, and then I was underneath. You know, you just go in as if you're going into the shed. It was live. So while I'm there, I went to Joburg on a taxi, and then I was walking on that street. Joburg, we used to have big buildings where there was Anglo Gold, Anglo Platinum, Anglo Gold. You remember that one? Yeah, 55 Marshall, to be specific. And then I saw the security. I was like, this is my matric result. I'm looking for the job. And it was not like I was begging by that time. No, that is my character. Sometimes I demand things. I'm looking for the job, sir. And then he said, wait, let me refer you to this Mlungu. That is the security. He said, this Mlungu. And then the Mlungu was Don Story was the head of training in Anglo-American, that side. I showed him. He said, no, I don't have a job. I think you should go to school. It was Don Story. I'm like, yeah, but not now. I need to work and support my mom. Then Don Story said, it's fine. Come to Witbank. He gave me direction. He gave me his number. Come to Witbank. Come and see me. So there was a training center there for that company in Wheatbank. Then I went there, and then he looked at it and said, okay, we will offer you an opportunity to go to university, but I think you should go to Wits Technikon. That time it was Wits Technikon before they merged with Rao. And then I looked at him, I'm like, yeah, but I need to work. I promised my mom that, my mom, I'm leaving, I'll give you something. I need to work. That time it was around May 1997. He said, it's fine. You go to that mine. It's like a placeholder for you up until university are opening next year. Then you must go. And we agreed. Then he deployed me to Kriel Kolari. By that time, when I got there, I was like an assistant underground, operator assistant, looking after cables. And then I was so keen to say, I want to learn this piece of equipment. So eventually I was operating as a shuttle car operator in that section. And remember, the main objective was I'm buying time for next year. Come next year, 1998, I refused to go to university. When Don Stewart was phoning training managers, I cried. I'm like, I'm not going, I'm working. Because I was getting paid. I remember my first pay, I sent it all to my mom. It was 5,700. Sent it all. And then the mine had to make a plan. I was offered a place again to stay in one of the hostels. During those times, mines, they were used to have hostels. Hostels, we've got full meal, there's security, everything you sorted.
Work easy.
That's correct. Yes. So I was there since 1997, 1998. Then 1999, Don Stewart came to Kriel, and then he said, parade him, block him. And then I was paraded. It was another lot of tears. And then he told me to say, and actually the contract says you should be at school. And then eventually they convinced me. I'm like, what about my mom? Then they said, we'll give you an allowance. And that was 1,500. Remember that time I was an operator, I used to get over 8,000 bonuses. So I was liquid, man. I was flexible. Now 1,500, but it's fine. I had to take 500 every month, give it to my mom, and then the rest I was spending it in Joburg. I went to University of Johannesburg. That was the year 2000. Now January I enrolled, finished the 2007, and then I went back to the mine. Then the rest is history. That is how I joined mining industry. It was never a plan. I never chose to do mining. Even now when I go home, I can tell you, I'm still not proud to say I work in the mines. Because the village where I come from, working in the mine, remember in Natal, you used to have those low sims mine, 1.5. They look at you, it's like this one is crawling in the mine, is using wheelbarrow, shovels. They don't know that we've got electrical engineers, environmental special, all these opportunities. Nobody knows there. So when they look at me, they're like, this one is working in the mines. And they are working in factories, in factories. And even financial, when they look at me, like, this one is not strong. He's working in the mines. Yeah, that is my story, man.
Sure. You've been in the industry for now 30 years, and you are currently a general manager at Kuthala. What would you say are the highlights in this journey?
From personal life, and I know you want to drill down into the career space. From personal life, my biggest highlights, my biggest achievement is to see that those 9 siblings that my dad left me with, all of them, if I'm looking, it is only one sister who got married earlier on that does not have a formal qualification. All of them, they've got degrees. And some of them, they are qualified nurses. That is the skill. And none of them was sponsored by your famous NFSAS. I am the NFSAS of that family. For me, that is the biggest highlight, to say I was able to change the livelihood of that family. We could. We're not rich, but we could. We can survive. That is the first one. For me to establish myself in the industry up until today, it's another highlight on a personal space. But in terms of a career itself, if I were to deep dive, I started mining millions, ma'am, in 2005. I've indicated to you to say 2004 I came back, I joined the mine in 2005. I remember now I was a miner. And then in that section, that was famous Ngwenya section at Krill. We delivered 1 million. I'm there, and I was still young. Come 2006. Since then, I've been involved with this million. So the mentality of high productivity is not just something that is starting now because I'm a GM. It's something that I grew up under. I'm familiar with that. I know it. And for me, at some stage, yes, we celebrate achievement. It's no longer the big achievement. Life have taught me to say your biggest achievement will come when you have zero harm at your operation. That's what I'm driving. That is what I'm passionate about. Zero harm. Millions is a standard. Those things, they just come. It's a standard.
Yes.
It's a standard, yeah.
Well, talking about millions, Hlonipheni, you produced 5 millionaires.
Yes.
In one financial year.
Yes.
That is a remarkable achievement, and maybe not just for you and Khuthala, but for the industry as well.
Yes.
When you think of this achievement, when you reflect on it, what goes through your mind?
There are a couple of things that I need to say here, and it's coming from the bottom of my heart.
Sure.
Maybe if I can have another opportunity, I will wake up and become a politician because I love the country. I love South Africa. I'm very patriotic about South Africa. So there is this perception that South Africans are lazy. South Africans are not productive. At some stage, there were a lot of changes in the business, and we were under the Australian leadership, and this is where this thing surfaced out to say we are not productive as South Africans naturally. And then number two, before I can tell you what does it mean for the whole country and the whole industry, we know 2006, 2005, we don't have easy reserves that is left underground.
Yes.
Keep in mind, during those times, it was easy to chop and change and say, I will man this panel, there's no die. It is what it is. We need to make use of what we have and be productive. So delivering 5 millionaires under these conditions that I've mentioned, I think as a country, it's not about Mhlonipheni, it's not about Khuthala, it's not about my company that I'm working for. I think if you're a miner, you should be proud to say, with these difficult conditions, with these difficult employees that we have, we've got youth around the mines. They've got that sense of entitlement. When they see you, they're like, what is in for me? So for you to convince them and say this is what they need to do, and at the end of the day, they do it so well. I mean, there's hope in the country. That's all I'm saying. South Africa, you should be proud to say, given all the difficult challenges, we can overcome them. We are strong, we are productive, and we know how to work.
Sure. Look, I mean, before you got the millions, things were in a certain way. I mean, there's stuff you had to do for you to get to there. So maybe paint us a picture how things stood before that, and what are those moments, or cumulative moments, that made you say, you know what, this has got to stop.
Sure.
We've got to produce not just target, but above target.
Sure. So it talks to the culture. If I may summarize your question and answer it in one sentence, culture is key in any organization. I was very fortunate enough to be transferred from one operation to where I am now, which is Khuthala, because it was 1 year after the new company have taken over Khuthala. So it was a new mine under this company of ours. And then the first general manager that was deployed there, actually he did so well. Stellar performance in terms of re-looking at the shift pattern. I think it's key. If I were to tell someone outside the industry, shift pattern is key. We transformed the whole operation to say, let us run on 3 shift basis. Why? We feel like as CEREIT, it's easy to manage. It's easy to implement all these interventions that we have. So that was done before I was even there. And then with that, 1 million was born. And it's very important. 1 million was born. And then the general manager was promoted to the next level. Then I was deployed to Khuthala. Now I go there. Remember, you can't fix everything in 1 year. 1 year. So we cannot say that I got there when it was cheese. No, things were still there and there. I had to complete the project. That was my mandate. Go and complete what this general manager started. When I was there, I realized that the mine is well designed. I don't think there's any mine except another one here next door that is very close to it. So it's got a beautiful shaft, beautiful infrastructure, and I had to send people there. There's no issue with people. People want to work. And I always tell people to say, my team, people will wake up 4 o'clock saying we're going to work. They want to work, but sometimes they're ending up not producing because of obstacles. And our job as leadership, as managers, is to remove those obstacles. Then I had a meeting with them. I told them. So it was quite difficult at the beginning. New GM that has just been promoted, and you are inheriting these high performing teams, and some of them won't believe in you. You have to convince them to say, I'm here, this is the direction I want to do. So the main thing that I did was to complete the culture transformation. Kuthala was not performing well in terms of safety. They had like 20 LTIs. Before I joined, there was a fatal. On that first year, there was a fatal when I was not there. So I had to change that culture to say we start with safety. Production will follow. I am a firm believer. If your standards in the mine are good, and then you work on the moral, then production will just follow. You don't have to worry a lot. Yes, there are key interventions that you need to thrive in terms of production, but if you ignore safety and standard, there is no production. So that's something I brought at Kuthala. They call me, I'm the Minister of Intensity, because when it comes to safety and standard, I'm very intense.
Sure.
So that is one thing that I have implemented on that one. On the other side, I realized that we don't have, I would say, production-related systems. They were there, but they were not working for the current regime. We had to retweak it. So we brought the mine operating system from the previous company where we were. It was fully implemented, and that's the biggest tool that we are running in that operation. MOS is key. We're using it as the vehicle to thrive or to deliver production at Kuthala. Just to mention a few, those are the few things that we have implemented. And then I got through BI. We had to do what we call gap analysis from the gate when we clock up until the call phase. What is working? What was not working? And then you will see, if I can show you that slide, it's a long list of things that were not working. And then we had to categorize them based on a priority to say, this group, we did it with this year, this one next year. Even today, we're not done. We're still moving. Now I'm focusing on diesel outbuys and dikes. It's part of the roadmap that we had. So the key thing was we were able to develop a roadmap for Kuthala to say, how do we take Kuthala to the next level? So that roadmap we're busy executing. We are there on top. Results are talking, but we are not sitting back and say we are complacent. We need to continue with the roadmap.
Yeah. Look, let's touch a bit on leadership in the mirror. It takes a particular kind of honesty to look at low performance, poor safety performance as well, and say this one is a reflection of me as a leader. Did you get to that point, and did that sort of shift things a lot when you reflected on performance and not say them, he, them, but that is me?
Ma'am, it's a very good question. You're talking to, I normally call myself a veteran. I was so unfortunate that at some stage I were to call to the mine to say, come and pick up this dead body underground. That was a different chapter. It taught me a lot of things. One of the things that I learned throughout that tough times when someone is dead underground, we have to come, we have to account. It forced me to reflect, to say, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough? It was before I got promoted into the GM level. But to be honest, I was very honest with myself. I said, I don't think I'm doing enough. This is when now I had to throw the line when it comes to safety. You heard me at the beginning. I said, I don't just mention safety because it's a requirement. It's me. It's me. When you talk about intensity, you talk about safety. It's coming from that one where I was like, I'm not going to continue picking up dead bodies underground. It ends now. Right? The moment I adopted that attitude, people behind me, they could see that this is what I'm driving. We don't have similar issues. So definitely people will do whatever that you allow them to do. In a nutshell, they say, what excites your boss fascinates you. That's it.
Sure. What boundaries do you hold as a leader in in good times, in the highs and in the lows. That sort of keeps you and your teams grounded. And I'm asking this because, you know, when things are good,
Sure.
right? Mhlonipheni is happy, he's
Sure.
greeting,
Sure.
things slide through. And when things are not good, now we are not sure if he's happy, he's going, he's coming, that consistency in leadership. So what boundaries do you keep in place, whether it's high or low?
Sure. I will try to summarize them, not cover all of them, but there are some boundaries that I feel like they are key in my management style. One, showing the highs when things are going well, success is there, growth is there, people are happy. You need to stay humbled as a leader. And we produced that 5 million tons. It didn't change who Mhlonipheni is. Mhlonipheni was still the normal Mhlonipheni, but deep down in my heart, I knew I was satisfied. So celebrate any milestone or success, but don't use your ego to drive into any decision. I'm talking about being humbled. On the other side, you need to know that when you are going low or when things are not going so well, you need to manage your emotions. When you are managing your emotions, it will help you in terms of arresting the panic in the business, because when things are not going well, I was talking about fatality. Now everyone is saying maybe the mine is closing, maybe the mine is not doing well, and if you as a leader you start panicking, then you are heading in the wrong direction. And then when things are going so bad, I think what is key for me is you need to be able to separate your personal challenges against work challenges. Don't allow your frustrations to creep into your team dynamics. So remain professional in actual fact. Remain professional. That is when we are low. But generally, ma'am, when you are leading, whether you are high, whether you are low, you need to have principles. I believe in consistency.
Yes.
You must be consistent. So if I treat you like this, and then the expectation is I must treat another person like that. That is consistency for me. And then you need to be transparent. And then the last one that I believe on is you need to be decisive. You must be able to take decision with authority, not just decision, with it. You know, a leader who cannot decide, it frustrates me. Sometimes decisions are good, sometimes you take a bad decision. It's okay, but we have taken a decision. Yes. I'm a firm believer of that. Yeah.
How do you drive the vision down to the face? I mean, and I'm thinking, obviously you've achieved this thing. You decided this is where we're going.
Sure.
How do you drive that vision down to the face while maintaining your jurisdiction?
Yeah.
And I mean that, sometimes as leaders, especially like you've gone through the ranks, you get excited, there's energy, you want everybody to catch it.
Yes.
To a point where you overextend yourself.
Yes.
You become part of the problem. Before you know it, you become the problem.
True.
Because you jump levels, you are quick. So how did you drive that vision so clearly to the ground while you had to respect everyone's space and that jurisdiction?
You know, in the industry where we're currently working, there is a small department called Business Improvement, BI. I can't operate without BI. Maybe it's because of my background when I was in TSD for that 6 years. I learned a lot in terms of what value can BI add. So there are two strategic platforms that I use as a GM to drive my message down there. One is called strategic sessions. So you will go to the senior or executive team. They will paint the picture. This is where Sereti is going. Then you take that message and then you go to Kuthala as a GM. With your HODs, you need to craft your own vision as a Kuthala leader now to say, for us to link with the top strategy, this is what will be driving at Kuthala. You get it maybe in a one-pager, done. And then you take it to the next level, which is your middle management and your junior management combined somewhere. Then you go and unpack your vision, the expectation, everything. You do it with them. And then their duty now is to cascade it down. By doing that, you're not only forcing them to engage the next level, but again, you are sharpening them. This is the future talent. Now they will go there and try and implement the same thing that you were talking about on the next level, then the message is going there. Then the next level, you will break it down. Remember, it was a big thing, so you're only breaking and taking what is relevant into your space. Then you go to your teams and say, this is what we are expected to be doing in this year. But over and above, I've got this VFL Thrive that I'm passionate about. It is visible fair leadership. It allows me to say, Tuesday, there's no office time for me and my issue. We go down and we engage. We are very mindful of what we are saying to say sometimes we are overreaching and then we end up becoming the problem. Strategically, I will go and test to say, tell me what's happening with this thing. Remember, it's coming from the big vision. If people are blank, they can't engage me on that particular thing. I know that my message did not flow to them. I'll go back and say, rehash, let us recommunicate. It's very encouraging when you go to the section, then people are talking about your enablers to say, look at our first sample. Last month we were on this month we are on. They tell you a story that you want to hear. It's not like it's a mistake. It's coming from you, but through different channels. It is sitting with the cold-faced miners.
Sure. If somebody wants to copy and paste your approach to producing the 5 million in a year, where do they even start? What would you say somebody must do to move that needle?
You need to find a way of working with people. You know, people, guys, it's a beautiful asset. Other people, they take them as a resource. Those people will make you or break you. The moment you understand that, then you go on. You know, what made things easy for me was my background. Remember, I was trying to hide underground and continue with that Shaklika for 1.5 years. So by doing that, I learned a lot about how most of the operators think. You need to win them. How do you win operators? Through their stomach. You can say it, whatever you say, go through their stomach. You will win those operators. So I went there and I engaged them. I told them I want us to be productive, but in the meantime, you need to get something from me and take it back home. What is it that you will prefer? Then they were like, GM, we hear this mine is doing this mine is doing that, but obviously you can't implement anything they are saying. So I went back, I'm like, I'm happy to do this and that and that. It's regarded as incentives, as if we're spoiling them, but it's a vehicle that I've used to drive their mind and say, this is what I want. So you put it in such a way that everyone will compete for that stake. At the same time now, that will put more pressure on you to say, how do you make sure that people are not working unsafe because we have introduced something else? Because if something happens, you as a leader, you'll be blamed to say, yeah, of course, people are doing this because they want money. We have introduced money, for example, but you need to have strong governance to manage that process, to say, while we are trying to go for that goal, this is how we should. If, for example, you were found driving 140 on a 120 area, making an example with the road conditions, there's a penalty that we apply at a mine. This is not how we operate, therefore we are disqualified from that thing. Then they move back. Same with millionaires. If there's an incident, life-changing rule, life-changing incident, or if there's any fatality, it's very clear to me. I won't give you what I promise you. There's a lot of promise to say, I will do 1, 2, 3, but scratch free.
Look, talking about the incentive part, and I'll ask you 2 questions on it. The first one is, sometimes I think of it, it's almost like a egg and a chicken situation, right? I think the basic business principles is you work, you get it, right? But we know mining. We've seen how things pan out. Sometimes when you give first, right, somebody tastes and they know if I work hard, then it's something they can conceptualize, visualize, and run to it.
Sure.
And so if you just say work, I'll give it to you, sometimes it doesn't have that impact. So what is your take on which one comes first? I'll
say system is a key driver to everything, ma'am. If you don't have systems that will give you the real picture, you are looking for trouble. Human beings will always be human beings. If there are incentives, they will try by all means to get those incentives. It's either by cheating, by stealing, or by taking shortcuts. It's a fact. I've been there. I was a miner at some stage. I was going in hoeing 24 meters unsupported. Yes, during those times, 2001, 2002, I've done it. But that also taught me to say, when I am sitting in the office, what systems must I implement that will monitor the behavior of these people while we are allowing them to go for gold? So it's a chicken and egg, but where I am, I feel like it's okay to incentivize good performance, but leadership must be awake. Leadership must be very close to the action, or else something can go horribly wrong. Yes.
No, looking at sustainability of our industry in Hlonipheni, I mean, we are challenged with a lot of things, particularly the coal space, which you are in. We're talking aging infrastructure, reducing investment interest, you can name it. How do you keep, especially with your senior leadership and yourself, how do you keep focus on being hungry for high performance while there's uncertainty in our space?
Look, there are things that you can control. There are things that you cannot control.
Yes.
If you talk about geopolitics globally, there are things that are happening and that will directly impact your operation. And you'll find that you cannot do anything if you are exporting coal with a lot of wars that are creeping in.
Sure.
It's either the rand is dropping or the rand is going up. You can't do much about it. Your exchange rate, you can't do much about it. But there are things that you can control. So the key drive here is you need to keep your operation so attractive and so relevant to your customers in such a way that they cannot even find any opportunity to say, we can live without this one. I'll give you a practical example. We're supplying Eskom with coal. Eskom has got so much options.
Yes.
They can track in coal and keep the station burning at a certain unit cost. But you need to remain competitive. While you are operating there, one thing that you must drive is, are we sending cheap coal or expensive coal to Eskom? So currently we're sending cheap. They cannot ignore our coal. But is it the right coal in terms of quality? You need to have that balance. But at the same time, are you productive are you sending enough volumes to them? So once you have that picture where people believe in you and your operation to say you are operating, then it becomes easy for you to go to them and say, capital investment, I need to continue doing 1, 2, 3, because rightfully so, aging infrastructure is a challenge, especially where I am. It's a challenge. But if I'm not productive, if I'm not producing enough, I can't tell anyone to say I need money. But because they can see what we are currently doing, it's easy for us to get that support. We are busy now starting a new operations, a new mine under Kuthala. It's Opencast. It's going to be big for the next 18 years. That is the life of the Opencast. We will have plus or minus 800 people who will be employed in that Opencast. And it was easy for our customer to sign that check and say, Hlonipheni, go and Opencast. Why? They've seen the value of what we are currently doing. So as much as sometimes we want to complain about the aging infrastructure, about the economy, lack of investment, go back and say, what can I do in my own space to influence that situation? Sure. Do well, do your best. They give you what you want.
Sure, Hlonipheni, I want to go back a bit on your career journey, and I'm thinking now as you speak, the wealth of wisdom. You've been in the space for 30 years, right? And there is periods in your career that were fairly stagnant. Okay, not fairly, visibly.
Frustrating. Yeah.
I can imagine. Maybe talk to us about what the period looked like for you, and when you look in hindsight, the value that it added to your journey.
Ma'am, I know to say when we do these interviews, sometimes we are guided by time. Ne?
Yes.
I must tell you to say, I'm a believer. I believe that God is there. I believe that everything happens for a reason. There was a time, I think I was at a shift boss level, where something, even today, I don't understand what was happening. Something happened. It was a career-threatening incident, but it was like medical condition at that time. We couldn't conclude what was wrong with Hlonipheni. So I think this is where the frustration started. Medical issues, and then I had to go and look for other options. I went to planning, and then when we are there, man, and today when you are in planning and as a GM, you are like gold where I am. I realize the value of that department, because when I was there, it's like someone is dumping me there. It was a dumping space for people who cannot perform, people who are not so well. And I went there, ma'am. I think 10 years after I've joined planning, it was a frustrating year for me. I saw peers moving up the rank, peers being recognized, peers being happy, achieving things, and we are just in that corner. You have to produce a plan, you have to go and do this. That's it. It was super. By design, I'm a winner. I want to win. Everything I'm doing, I want to win. So for the first time, I felt like I'm not important on this planet. But with time, and like I'm saying, God knows our journey. With time, I realized that it was a very important step, very important phase of my life. I learned a lot through that phase. One, I respect people more than anything else. I don't think if I came back from university and went up like everyone, I think I would be one of the arrogant leaders in the industry. I was, but this thing taught me to be humbled, because I used to tell people to say, what are you doing in TSD? You are a minor must be there. Then God said, you go there, you must feel it. So I was transformed like that. But the main thing is, during that period of my journey, I think this is where I learned most about mining. Most. And even today, some of the tools that I'm using as a general manager, they are entrenched. They are like coming from TSD. They are coming from project space. That 10-year experience that I had is massive. It's massive. We tend to get frustrated, if I may tell you, ma'am, when things are not moving forward, to say, this manager doesn't like me, and we become rebellious. We are grumpy, unhappy. We criticize the company. But when you hang in there, you persevere, and then now there it is, your time will come. Because the moment we have regime change, someone is going to look at you in a different space. You will connect with that person, and then boom, you are a very important person. Now they say, come here, we want to give you an opportunity. What do you have? Some people, it's nothing. But if you go there with that rich experience, people will be like, wow, this is a manager, this one. And then you start going up like that, man. So I would say in terms of frustrations to the new professionals joining industry, you need to be patient. There's nothing. The best teacher of your career will be the experience. If you don't have enough experience, chances are you can make it, but if you have experience, things become easy for you to just manage and move forward.
Well, having learned about you, discipline is quite a big thing for you. Personally, for your team, for even executives. Tell us a bit about that.
Discipline, it goes down to everything from home, your social space, work, and. I'll just give you a few highlights. You can go on social media. I don't post anything.
So difficult to find. Like it's
yes, you can't find anything around me. You go on LinkedIn. I don't know when last did I update it. I need to get a technician to help me, because you guys, you want to go and dig and get information about me. You won't get it. There was a very good GM who called me in and say, if you want to ruin your life, you must be the friend of Twitter or Facebook and post your personal life there. At some stage, it will come back and haunt you. You need to refrain from it. Open, join, read, and close it like that. So I'm not like one of those people who cook Sunday course. Then the next thing it is up there, everyone knows. I'm playing very, very low, intentionally. So it's helping me with discipline. One, your family won't be exposed. You don't even know who I'm married to. You don't even know about my kids, because you won't get them on social media. I try by all means not to post. Going to work as a GM, 5 o'clock I am in the office. Remember when you were asking me about boundaries? One of them that I said, whether you are doing well or bad, but it's consistent. 5 o'clock I'm there. If I'm late, 5:20, I am at the mine. That's it. And that time, few people are still coming in, 1 or 2, and then they start coming in 5:45, because we've got a 6 o'clock shift. I'm already there. I open my notes, open my laptop. I prepare for each and every day. That requires discipline.
Sure.
When everyone joins me, my HOD, I already know. Then I can stand up and greet them, have a conversation. But I know exactly what is burning here at the back of this one comes in. I'm like, I need 1, 2, 3. Hey, don't forget this. It's because that hour, I use that hour to prep myself. That is discipline. And then all the systems that we have introduced, one of them is Tuesday, we have to put your PPE, you visit whatever site, be it open cast, be it underground, blood. They must see you on Tuesday doing it as discipline. Then the rest will follow. They will do exactly the same. We are very blessed, if I may say, ma'am. Our senior leadership, they are also practicing this discipline, I think, on another level. If you're not disciplined, I don't think you will be able to work for Seriti. You won't. It matters a lot. How do you look? How do you conduct yourself? How do you behave? It's key in Seriti. So as a general manager, they need to see that one in me, to say this one is an example of what discipline look like.
Sure. Look, if you were to share a message to other general managers listening to this, mine managers, mine overseers, underground managers, ship bosses, what would you say to them? Particularly something you think, I wish I knew this earlier. What would you say to them?
Being a general manager is a very nice role. It's horrible on the other side. It can be nice, rewarding, it's challenging. To the other GMs, to the other miners, if you want to enjoy this role of being a general manager. We've got a qualified doctor at the clinic, and he reports to the GM. Sure. And do you think I know a lot about medicine and all this stuff? But I ask him questions in such a way that the man will sweat and say, let me go and do my assignment. I'm coming back to you. So all of that, it requires you to position yourself, one, as a proper father of that operation. If you are a woman, see yourself as the queen mother of that operation. So everyone is like your child. Treat them equal as a GM, right? It's very important. For you to enjoy that role, you need to manage safety. If you don't manage safety, GM is a horrible position. That is why I was telling you. It's a horrible position if you don't manage safety. It's better when you're not performing, you are called in for poor performance, you say numbers are not numbering here. It's okay. You will leave that boardroom, they will sweat you, they can even fire you. It's okay. You have a peace of mind, you can get another job, or you can go to farming and start operating tractors. But if you don't manage safety, you can't replace any human being that have lost his or her life under your operation. That is the message to all GMs to say. That is a decider for you. If you can't manage safety, your life will be horrible, will be miserable, and it stays with you for the rest of your life to say, I had that horrible incident, I should have done better. So you don't want to see yourself saying those kind of words to say, I should have done your better. Do your best. And then people will see that you have done your best.
Thank you so much for your insight and for just being so open and genuine and practical about your journey and, some of the ways you win. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I think now I would love to do it again. It's not a difficult one. Give me another 2 or 3 years. I promise to go and acquire another 6 millionaires, depending on the key enablers. If they allow, I think I should come back and give you update on the latest millionaire status. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
And there you have it. Proof that behind every great number is a greater story of leadership, of people, and of a refusal to settle. I hope Mhlonipeni's game plan has inspired you to keep leading, to keep pushing, and to keep building. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye, and God bless.